As a fire chief, I'm certainly familiar with burnout. You know, it's a 24/7, 365 operation, as most businesses are anymore in the global economy. You have some guidance in the book about burnout, but can you talk a little bit more about that and sort of recognizing it in yourself and then in others with whom you're close?
So burnout is a really important question, something that we all as leaders, men and women, put a really brave face to disguise, to hide, to deny. And I think that it is something that we must be more self-aware of. We must seek help. And I don't mean counseling. I mean peer advice, talk to your spouse a little more, talk to your friends, and find your own way forwards. So I too experienced it, 24 years, right? And for me, a first sign of it was not being pleased by my platinum card anymore. Right? I mean, people kind of talk so much about this sexy lifestyle that business leaders have. I had access to, I'd been on a private jet, and the first time it was exciting, but traveling to New York for a 17-minute meeting is not exciting. When I've day tripped Washington several times, I've day tripped London 6 times. Shall I remind you where I live? I live in Nairobi, Kenya. Right? So, and business leaders go through this stuff all the time. So realizing that this is actually silly, it's non-essential. I remember going to a meeting in upstate New York for 17 minutes, right? I do not remember why. And I've actually asked the person who asked me to that meeting, and he doesn't remember why. But I remember the 2 school concerts I missed that week. I remember the look on my 16-year-old and my 10-year-old's face. And when I woke up after 24 years, I have a 16-year-old who's going to boarding school, right? And I have a 10-year-old who is so much more grown up and mature than I ever imagined. Now, we all have our own stories. And the issue is more not so much about the work-life balance part of it or the missing part, but are you delivering outcomes? So I know a lot of people who are great, they're fine, they're still doing the stuff, and they're not experiencing burnout. Not everybody does, right? Or not yet. But what they do to sort it out, to be self-aware of it, is really important. So are you enjoying it? Do you have some self-fulfillment? Do you have some sort of work-life balance? And work-life balance, people have asked me all my life, what is work-life balance? I had a stupid answer all these years. And let me tell you what the answer was. I thought it was very funny. And the answer was, I have the greatest work-life balance. Mira, my wife, has life. I have the work. That's the balance. When I actually take a stand back from it, it's actually really a laugh at myself. And laugh at everybody that actually thought it was really funny. Because there's nothing funny to it.
It's really sad, too, when your kids call you Mr. Agarwal and say, how long are you staying this time? Gentlemen at the back.
Have you just come for laundry?
That's right, yes.
Good evening. My name is Faisal Al-Sair. And I like your example about the goats and the lion. I mean, being a married man, I've been both animals for a long time. My question to you is how do you manage upwards, especially managing a boss who's really not up to date with what's happening, especially if the answer you get is inshallah and bukra and ma'asalama, and these are how do you manage that?
You missed inshallah, which often is the case.
Inshallah.
So I think that examples matter, right? Showing live examples. So you want to manage upwards, show what you've done downwards. Show examples of how you've shown the torch on your team. Show examples of how you've got their back. Show examples of building great talent and leveraging it. Show examples of great outcomes that you deliver. Show examples of shining the torch upwards. And I talk about this. So, leaders, small and young, big and old, also, we all are human beings. Shine the torch on your boss as well. Do you do enough of that? And I don't mean kiss ass. I mean, recognizing a senior leader that you directly report to for what they've done, because we all make sacrifices, we all work hard. But if it is not working, lead and continue to lead without a title. To quote my friend Robin Sharma, keep doing that, right? And you will get around it because there is a catch up. I really believe after 24 years of corporate life, it comes back. Shareholders are not dumb. The ecosystem around you, think of it as a season. I think of it as a season. Fall is bad this year, it'll get better.
We have a question at the back as well again. Thank you.
Thank you. It's absolutely fascinating hearing you talk, and I've got a slightly controversial question or a slightly sort of attacking question just to see.
Oh, get
how
that
you
on
feel.
camera, will you?
I've heard a lot of business leaders talk who are at that point in their career where they've been incredibly successful, as you have, and have taken a change in focus perhaps. And one thing that consistently comes across is the family card, i.e. the stories of missed events, etc. And I'm in the midpoint of my career, perhaps, moving on. I have 3 young children. I think they know my name, I'm not sure. In your career, what would you do differently if you were able to play it again? The caveat to that question, though, is not in a perfect world, but in a world where if you hadn't have gone to that 17-minute meeting in upstate New York, you'd have probably been fired or passed over for promotion.
Yeah.
So practically, what would you suggest for somebody, maybe at my level or to a slightly different level? How do you handle those kind of situations of trying to obtain a work-life balance?
So it's very difficult. It's not easy. I have a lot of empathy, right? I'm not saying that I pretend like I have the perfect solution for it. But I think that being able to be fast and nimble, right? Being able to be really focused on delivering outcomes, right? So ask yourself, and I'll come back to you, is when you go on these trips, how much extra time do you spend? So if I day trip London six times, 7 times that I can remember, it's in some ways my choice. Because to your question, I'm coming back to my family. I'm not spending the night there. I have never been away home from the week for over a weekend. Only missed flights and some of that. Sunday night departures, I've done that. But it doesn't matter that my next flight is to Beijing. I come home to Nairobi. Right? I don't drink on flights. I drink enough. I haven't had a sip of anything on a plane 15 years.
Try and sit at the front. It's a lot easier.
I can't.
I've been on BA too.
And it's that type of stuff. So yes, there's circumstances around you that you feel are forcing you to do stuff. But the other stuff, when you come home, can you go to the movies with your wife when you get off a 6 o'clock flight for an 8 o'clock show? I do. I go to dinner with my wife. I've come from Beijing. I'm so proud of it. Because you know what? I do that for my clients. I get off a long flight and I go see my clients. I go to the office. Why wouldn't you do it for home? So yes, someone is kind of giving you all this stress and a hard life back at the office, but find a balance that works for both sides, no? If you think your clients are important, well, you've got some important clients back at home.
You know, it's interesting. One of the things, by the way, I'm going to keep an eye out for hands, so just feel free to put them up. One of the interesting things, people say to me, can you give me some advice on how to get into broadcasting? I want to get into... The interesting thing is, my advice would be so irrelevant, because when I started out at the BBC in '85, radio was recorded on 1/4-inch tape, which I physically cut with a razor blade. Cameras at the BBC were film, and the reporter had 45 minutes while the film was being developed before they could actually see any of the pictures, and they were writing in the meantime. Everything has changed. There was no breaking news, no live news, no flash storage. There was none of this stuff. So, you know, I'm obviously, the corporate world is something I'm not that familiar with. What relevance, or how much I should say, does relevance alter over time? What were your experiences? What would they be to the young entrepreneurs?
But even before we go young, if I may, so to stay with that, think about your life, Riz, from CNN to Al Jazeera. Okay, so you were pretty well known. You'd earned yourself a nice name at CNN. Now you get hired into this job at Al Jazeera. Did you feel any of this culture within a culture I talk about? So you got this big job, hopefully you got a pay raise and all this stuff, but did people discount you and say, well, that was CNN, we do things differently? Did people kind of say, yes, Riz is great, but he's not been shoulder to shoulder with us? Did you feel isolated at times? Did you feel any of that?
No, so the irony, my story is very different. I don't want to detract from your story because it's just too bizarre. Al Jazeera, I was lucky I had I was founding director, so I had of the English channel, so I had the freedom to set it up the way I wanted to. We were mostly ex-BBC and CNN. There's a strange thing in the TV business that people watch people. The management often forget this. People watch people. So a lot of the time when people were watching me on Al Jazeera English, they thought they were watching CNN. And so many of the top guests we booked, they'd be like, what time is this on CNN? Because they were going according to the name they trusted, which is great, that's vindicating, it's nice. But it's interesting. Colin Powell, Naguib Suarez from Egypt, all these people who initially said to me, are you sure you want to make this move? They actually ended up coming and saying, I love the channel. So it's not really a natural comparison, but I do agree the decisions can be a challenging one. I made sure first that I wasn't going to be in a position where I'd be told what to say. And that's often the most common thing that comes up. Have you been told what to say? So it's not an easy comparison, but there was I personally have never felt that. I've gone where I felt there's going to be something interesting to do, and as long as I can maintain my integrity. But it's a different world. We don't have the same, our clients are our viewers, for example, but even that has changed. I mean, the people I'm dealing with for my underwear brand are influencers. They're not news people.
No, but did you not have staff at Al Jazeera that
Yeah.
directly reported for you?
Yeah, of course.
But they'd never worked with you, so how did they trust you?
Well, they'd watch me. That's the irony. I mean, I had...
Right, but how did they really trust you? So over a period of
Well,
time,
because
CNN, you must have had, what you felt were ambassadors to use.
No, so what we did, but I always ran a team very democratically. I've never considered myself a manager, and I don't want to be a manager. I'm someone who wants to do the creative stuff. I enjoy the conversation. I don't want to do the stuff so I actually hired someone who I knew from many, many years as the manager of the team. So it's my own personal thing. I devolve myself of the responsibility of management in order to focus on what I feel I'm competent at and avoid making big screw-ups because I'm trying to do something I can't. But so that the team was quite a democratic team. It worked really well. And in fact, I'm still in touch with all of them.
Nice.
Yeah, no, it's worked out well. It's a different business, though. In your case, what I was trying to get at is that the journey you've been through obviously has changed over time. So what I'm trying to get is what are the core elements that remain constant through any journey, irrespective of how the mechanisms of a business change.
Well, I kind of said that, right? Trust and relationship. I mean, the call out for that is really key. How we build trust with teams, how we hire teams, how we demonstrate that we're authentic in our ability to lift them up, elevate them, give them the best opportunities, not take sides. So if you kind of think about it, and it's a interesting exercise of any of you want to indulge yourself and do this. Look at a graphic I have in my book that talks about 3 kinds of team members. I call them ambassadors, skeptics, and detractors. And then go back to your life and think about your entire staff pool, your direct reports, and put them in those 3 buckets. And then ask yourself a really hard question. Who do you stand with? Are you standing with the ambassadors, your favorites? Are you standing with the people who sit on fences and are skeptics? Or are you sitting with the detractors? Do you really talk to the detractors? Because there are really only 3 kind of team members. Those that want to actually backstab you, your detractors, they hate you, they work for you, you know that, right? Those that are fence sitters, their mind is not made up. And those that are your absolute fans. So people kind of take sides with their absolute fans. They give them the best projects, they give them the bonuses, they give them the trips. It's all that. Do you actually spend time with your detractors? Those elements don't change regardless of how we conduct business and technology or any of that. And I'd like to believe I'm as contemporary as anybody else.
And I guess also, actually the investment in the relationship has an outcome. That's the key. That's one of the key things. Folks, a few more minutes perhaps if you want. Daniel, thank you. A couple of more questions, then we can give you the chance to just casually chat with Vishal. You're going to be around for a while afterwards. Happy to sign books too, yeah?
Not part of the book, but I wanted to get your opinion on, you've worked for partnerships and also for publicly listed companies. Having seen what happened to your good friend Jeff at GE, what do you think is wrong in today's world with large listed companies? Corporate greed, all these things spring to mind, but
We still have this camera on?
can you... This is Chatham-Mouth rules, don't worry. But if we could get your opinion on that, please.
Sure. Look, whether it's a partnership or the large multinational kind of setting with a big leader, it's the same thing that these leaders, are they demagogues? Are these leaders the princely states that I was helping you all visualize a little earlier, right? What they say, does that go? Do you challenge each other? Do you actually sit and debate investment issues and hard decisions? And do they provide a safe environment where you can actually speak your mind? When you say, I'm going to go buy the next $6 billion company, or how much was Allston? I'm joking. Right? Then do you have enough of people around you that says back to you, really? We're going to do an Allston kind of deal? Right? And have that kind of dialogue? And do you provide that safe environment to do that? Because that's the problem, right? I mean, I know of a private equity firm that's having some of the same dialogue today, right?
Maybe
We're in
time,
the Middle East.
Yeah,
right?
so maybe time for one more question if anyone wants to put their hand up. Was that a hand? No. Otherwise, I'm going to share with you a story because, talking about leadership, it was interesting. I heard about this one particular guy who came in as the new CEO of a company, and he wanted to prove he was a tough leader, that people, would feel the impact of his leadership. So one day he was walking past the staff canteen, and he saw this young man propped up on the canteen counter, chatting up one of the young women behind the bar, the canteen bar. So he walked in, watched him for a minute, and the guy was chatting away, and he walked in and he said, "Excuse me, young man." And the guy said, "Yes." He said, "How much do you make a month?" The guy said, "About $1,500. And he said, "Okay." And he pulled out his fat wallet because he loved to carry cash to show his, and he pulled out $3,000. He said, "2 months, out of here, get out of here, never come back." The guy took the money and left. He said, "That's how I treat people who can lounge around during the day when they should be productive." What does he do anyway? And one of the staff said, "Well, he just delivered the pizzas, actually."
That's very good.
So sometimes leadership. Sorry, Roseanne, you had a question?
No worries. Yeah. I just wanted to ask that what can someone who works in a family business or an SME take from your book?
So I'm asked that a lot as a YPO, right? So as a YPO, a third of our members were born with platinum spoons in their mouth. I'm joking. So I'm asked that quite a bit. And I think the answer to that is the play horizontal bit is really important, right? Don't be a spa leader. Don't sit back. And business owners do this all the time. Say, look, I'm the founder. I'm the president's son, right? I hired the executive. I hired the chief executive. It'll happen. And by all means, my door is open. It's not open. People can't get to you. They don't have access to you. When they text you, you frown on them, you block them, right? Some young manager in your office sends you a LinkedIn request. You reject it because you're the chairman's son. I know you won't do that as well. But that's the type of stuff that it's, people watch leaders all the time. And the part that I think family businesses don't realize is that they're being compared every day by that staff pool with multinational guys, with founders, with entrepreneurs. The guy that is working for you has got friends at McKinsey and Procter & Gamble and all that stuff, and knows about perks and training programs and all that kind of stuff. And why does he work for you? What is keeping them there? It's your brand? They don't care about your brand. You better make it a fulfilling place for them. You better show them that they're going to learn. You better show them that you truly have their back. And then they'll feel wanted. I don't know if that helps.
Folks, are we about ready to wrap it up, or would you like to ask any more questions? The good thing is, Vishal, you know, we'll be around for a while, so if you want to have a chat and just discuss things with him on a more personal level, then please do.
I wouldn't mind to hear a little
And
bit
have a
more
drink,
about the
yeah.
giving side. What
Oh, yeah, sure.
do you think
Oh, can I just, in case people can't hear at the back, yeah.
My question was to ask Vishal as a final question, to articulate a little bit more on the giving side. What do you think are the hallmarks of a good owner, leader, etc., on the giving
If
side?
I could personalize it back, Guy, because I know you, one thing you do really well is you're a connector of people, right? And I think that's a big give. So if you actually think about it, right? So how many times we've asked our friends, our business associates, our peers, say, hey, you know Riz Khan, will you connect me? And you never get a reply back. You never get a text back. And people want to do this with their relationships. They think you're going to take over that relationship. What are they going to do? You connect them to Riz Khan. They and Riz do some business together. What do you want in that? Give. It'll come back. People do that from a, you know, I kind of give the simple example of, maybe I'm a fool, I always pick up the dinner bill first. And I'm not doing it in a superficial manner. It comes back. Just to give an example, so connections, generosity, taking a young person in your team to a client meeting, a business trip, stopping and having a conversation. Some of us are in hospitality or hospitality assets, how we treat service staff. You know, I really watch leaders treating service staff. And, you know, if that's how they treat service staff, imagine what they do with their teams. Well, why? Because person is a young waiter? Well, imagine what they do with their intern. So I think those are the gives, and it comes back. Now, maybe I'm an idealistic fool, but in my 24 years, it's come back. And the giving is without an exception, without an expectation, without quantification, without a measured ROI, and without periods of time in mind. That's the give. So this is not meant to be CSR.
Paying it forward. Paying it forward.
It's not paying it forwards. It's doing your stuff, right? Delivering outcomes. I love getting young people jobs. I absolutely love young people getting young people jobs. And I don't think it's philanthropy, because I'm not just getting you a job. I've kind of had a job interview with you, right? As I'm chatting with you, I've had a job interview. So if I take this young person I met this morning and put them in my friend Alnice Popat's business, right? It's to great benefit to Mr. Popat, right? And to the young person. And they both will be my friends. No more expectations. Something will happen.
Thank you.
Right, excellent. Ladies and gents, anything else? If not, a big round of applause, please, for Vishal. Thank you. Well done.
Thank you, Riz.
My pleasure. And then, of course, as I say, let's not end the evening here. Let's just really begin it. Now we can stand up and mingle.
And just to the point of give together, if I could just make a simple point, I'm not patronizing Riz, right? So it is not easy for an African author out of Nairobi to get people to endorse, blurb, read the manuscript. I called Riz once. He was so generous with his time. He read the manuscript, wrote me a lovely note, you know, blurbed it, endorsed it, and has made time to come and do this, right? And he doesn't need to do this at all.
Thank you, Vishal. I'm still trying to figure out how you got her email to say, this is Kim Kardashian, I'd like to have a word with you.
Thank you.